Enjoy the show. My wife's Apple Watch synced to my iPad by mistake. Her heart rate spiked to 140 beats per minute every Tuesday at 2 p.m. while she was there in meetings. I drove to her office, but her car wasn't there. I checked the GPS tag in her trunk, and that blinking blue dot on my screen didn't lead me to the downtown corporate plaza where she worked as a senior marketing director. It led me 30 minutes in the opposite direction toward a high-end gated apartment complex in the wealthiest suburb of our city. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. For 5 years, I believed I had the perfect marriage. My wife was driven, successful, and affectionate, or at least she used to be. Over the last few months, the affection had been replaced by exhaustion, and the long hours at the office had become a daily excuse. I had rationalized it. I had supported her. I even made her dinners and left them in the fridge for when she dragged herself home at 9 p.m. But seeing that heart rate data, the undeniable biological proof of physical exertion in the middle of a workday, shattered my reality in an instant. I pulled into the visitor parking lot of the complex. It was a sprawling modern building with glass balconies and luxury cars lining the spots. I didn't know which unit she was in. I didn't know who she was with. My heart was pounding out of my chest, mirroring the very data that brought me here. I parked my car under the shade of a large oak tree, turning off the engine. I just sat there, staring at the rows of identical balconies, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, hoping this was all some massive, absurd misunderstanding. I stepped out of my car, hiding behind the trunk, trying to scan the windows. That was my first critical mistake. I wasn't a spy. I wasn't some cold, calculating operative. I was just a terrified, heartbroken husband making it up as I went along. Suddenly, my phone vibrated in my pocket. The caller ID flashed her picture, a smiling photo from our honeymoon. I answered it, my throat dry. "Hello?" "Hey, honey," she said. Her voice sounded perfectly normal. Too normal. "What are you doing over on the west side?" My blood ran cold. I looked up. There, on a fourth-floor balcony, stood my wife. She was wearing a silk robe I didn't recognize, holding a coffee mug and staring directly down at the visitor parking lot. She was looking right at me. Panic seized my brain. I had to invent a lie, and I had to do it instantly. Hey, yeah, I'm looking at a commercial property," I stammered, my mind racing. "My firm is thinking about opening a satellite branch out here, and I was just doing a drive-by of the neighborhood." There was a pause on the other end of the line. A long, agonizing pause. "Oh," she finally said. "I thought you were in the office all day." "Just stepped out for a bit." I forced a laugh that sounded hollow even to me. "What about you? How are the meetings?" "Good. Back to back as usual. I'm actually stepping into one right now. I have to go." She hung up. I watched her turn around and walk back inside, sliding the glass door shut behind her. I got back in my car and drove away, my hands shaking uncontrollably. She bought the lie in the moment, but the seed of doubt was planted. When she came home that night, the atmosphere in our house was freezing. She didn't kiss me hello. Over the next 48 hours, she went into full lockdown mode. She changed the passcode on her phone. She logged out of our shared Apple ID, cutting off my access to her location and her watch data. She changed her laptop password and started taking phone calls in the garage. Whenever I walked into a room, she would immediately minimize whatever window was open on her screen. If I asked her a simple question about her day, she became incredibly defensive, accusing me of interrogating her. She knew I was close to the truth, and she was building a fortress. I was entirely locked out. I couldn't even go to my MIL for help. because she would instantly tip my wife off. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, tiptoeing around a stranger who was actively deceiving me, and I had absolutely zero proof to confront her with. The weeks that followed were an agonizing blur of sleepless nights and silent dinners. I was paralyzed by the lack of evidence. I couldn't confront her without proof, or she would gaslight me into oblivion and paint me as the controlling, paranoid husband. But then, the paranoia told me to look where I still had access: our finances. We had a joint high-yield savings account. For 4 years, we had been diligently funneling a portion of our paychecks into it, building a safety net that had just crossed the $40,000 mark. It was our emergency fund, our future. I sat down at my desk, opened my browser, and logged into the bank portal. The screen loaded. I blinked, sure that the page had glitched. Available balance: $1,500. I refreshed the page. The number stayed the same. My hands began to tremble as I pulled up the transaction history. There it was, a methodical, quiet drain. Over the past 3 months, she had been initiating wire transfers of $5,000 and $10,000 at a time, moving the money to an external account at a different bank, an account I didn't recognize. In total, she had siphoned $38,500. I grabbed my keys and practically ran to my car. I drove straight to our bank branch, bursting through the doors and demanding to speak to a manager. I sat in a small, glass-walled office, hyperventilating as the branch manager looked over my screen. "Sir, I understand you're upset," the manager said, his voice laced with corporate pity. "But this is a joint account. Under the terms of the agreement, either account holder has the legal authority to withdraw or transfer up to the total balance without the other's consent." "But she's stealing our life savings," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "Can't you freeze the account? Can't you reverse the transfers?" "I'm sorry," he replied gently. "Because she is an equal owner of the account, these are authorized transactions. We cannot freeze the account or intervene without her signature or a court order." I walked out of that bank feeling like a ghost. I sat in my car in the parking lot and just stared at the steering wheel. She wasn't just having an affair. She was systematically dismantling my life. She was securing a golden parachute with my hard-earned money while preparing to cut the cord. And the worst part? The law was letting her do it. I was legally losing. This was my rock bottom. For 2 days, I did nothing. I went to work, I came home, and I played the role of the oblivious husband flawlessly because I was too broken to do anything else. But grief eventually gave way to something else: a cold, quiet, and terrifyingly focused anger. I didn't need a therapist. I needed a shark. I spent days researching and finally retained my lawyer, a man who had a reputation in the city for being an absolute nightmare in a courtroom. He didn't offer me a tissue when I told him my story. He offered me a legal pad. "She's siphoning marital assets," my lawyer said, leaning back in his leather chair. "It's a classic move, but it leaves a paper trail. We need to find out exactly what she bought with your $38,500. Through a private investigator my lawyer recommended, we traced the external account. It turned out my wife hadn't just been hiding that money for a rainy day. She had used it as a massive down payment on a brand new top-of-the-line luxury SUV worth $90,000. But she didn't buy it for herself. She bought it for the lover. The investigator got photos of the AP driving the car, parking it at the exact high-end apartment complex my GPS had led me to weeks prior. I felt sick. I had financed her affair. I had paid the down payment for her boyfriend's car. "She beat us," I told my lawyer, throwing the photos on his desk. "She gave him the money. It's gone." My lawyer smiled. a thin, predatory smile. Not quite. Look at the financing documents the PI pulled from the dealership. The car is $90,000. She put down $38,500. That leaves a loan balance of $51,500. He slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was the loan agreement. My wife had stellar income, but she had terrible credit due to some old student loan defaults she had hidden from me. To get approved for a $51,500 auto loan at a reasonable interest rate, she needed a co-signer with impeccable credit. She needed me. I stared at the signature line on the bottom of the page. There, in blue ink, was my signature, but I hadn't signed it. She forged my name, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a freight train. She made me the primary owner on the financing to get the approval. Exactly, my lawyer said, his eyes gleaming. To the bank and to the state, you own that vehicle. But more importantly, by forging your signature on a financial instrument to secure a $50,000 loan, your wife just committed federal wire fraud and identity theft. We don't just have leverage for a divorce anymore. We have the nuclear launch codes. The plan we formulated was a masterpiece of legal and psychological warfare, but to pull it off, I had to be the greatest actor on earth. For the next 3 weeks, I was husband of the year. I bought her flowers. I cooked her favorite meals. I rubbed her shoulders when she complained about how stressful work was. Every time she lied to my face, I smiled back, knowing I was holding a lit match over a barrel of gasoline. While she was busy playing house at the AP's apartment, I was systematically unweaving her safety net. I opened a new single-name account at a completely different banking institution. I legally transferred the remaining $1,500 from our joint account into it. I contacted all 3 credit bureaus and put a hard freeze on my Social Security number so she couldn't open any more fraudulent lines of credit. Meanwhile, my lawyer was busy drafting emergency motions. We weren't just filing for divorce. We were filing to put an immediate freeze on her personal, individual bank accounts and her direct deposits to recover the $38,500 in stolen marital funds, citing the documented fraud as cause for the freeze. Then I gathered the undeniable proof. I had the forged loan documents, the GPS data, the photographs from the PI, and the bank statements showing the unauthorized transfers. The trap was fully set. I just had to wait for Tuesday at 2 p.m. Tuesday rolled around. The familiar routine played out. She kissed me on the cheek, told me she had a brutal afternoon of strategy meetings, and drove off. I waited 30 minutes, then pulled up the PI's tracker. The AP's luxury SUV was parked in its usual spot at the gated complex. I picked up my phone and called a specialized private towing company that my lawyer kept on retainer. I emailed them the official registration and the financing documents, which legally proved I was the primary owner of the vehicle. "Hi," I said to the dispatcher. "I need you to recover a vehicle for me. It's parked at an apartment complex downtown. I have the state registration and financing documents proving ownership. I want it towed to a secure private lockup facility immediately. No keys available, just flatbed it." An hour later, I sat in a coffee shop across the street from the apartment complex and watched as a massive flatbed tow truck pulled through the gates. 10 minutes after that, it rolled back out, carrying a pristine, black $90,000 SUV. The AP's prized possession was gone, entirely legally under my direct orders. I went home, made myself a cup of coffee, and laid the paperwork out on the kitchen island like a beautiful legal buffet. At 4:30 p.m., the front door burst open. My wife practically fell into the house, her face pale, her hands shaking as she held her phone. Her colleague from work wasn't covering for her today. She was entirely on her own. "The car was stolen," she screamed, not even taking her shoes off. A car was stolen from downtown. We have to call the police." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Nobody stole a car," I said calmly. "I had my property towed to a secure lot. It's currently impounded." She froze, the color completely drained from her face. "What are you talking about?" I slid the stack of papers across the granite countertop. On top was the forged loan document, my fake signature highlighted in bright yellow marker. Beneath it were the bank statements showing her transfers. Next to that were the divorce papers and the emergency court order freezing her personal bank accounts. "You forged my signature to secure a $50,000 loan for your boyfriend's car using our emergency savings," I said, my voice eerily quiet. "That's bank fraud. That's a felony. My lawyer has already notified the financing bank about the fraudulent signature. I've frozen my credit, closed our joint accounts, and as of an hour ago, a judge approved a freeze on your personal checking account to recover the marital assets you stole." She stared at the papers, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The confident, manipulative woman who had been gaslighting me for months vanished, replaced by a terrified criminal realizing the walls had just caved in. You can't do this," she stammered, tears finally welling in her eyes. "We can fix this. Please, let's just talk." "There is nothing to talk about," I replied, stepping away from the island. "You have exactly 1 hour to pack whatever fits in 2 suitcases and leave my house. If you fight me on the divorce, if you try to claim a single dime of our remaining assets, or if you ever try to contact me again, my lawyer will forward this entire file to the district attorney's office and press full criminal charges for identity theft and fraud. You will spend every cent you make on criminal defense attorneys and then you will go to prison." She collapsed against the counter, sobbing hysterically. But I felt absolutely nothing. No pity. No sadness. Just the cold, crisp satisfaction of absolute justice. She packed her bags in silence and called her AP for a ride, since he no longer had a vehicle. I watched them pull away from the curb in a cheap ride share. She thought she could drain my bank account and leave me in the dust. Instead, she drove away with frozen assets, 2 suitcases, a ruined reputation, and the looming threat of federal charges hanging over her head for the rest of her life. I didn't just win the divorce, I decimated her reality, and I did it all completely by the book. What's up, guys? I have to say before we wrap up that the level of self-control this guy had to play the smiling, clueless husband for 3 weeks while secretly holding the nuclear codes is absolutely insane. Just a quick reminder, as always, this script, the narration, and the whole story you just heard is my original author's work, crafted right here for the channel. Now, I want to hear from you down in the comments. If you found out your partner used your life savings to secure a car loan for their affair partner, what is the first financial move you are making to get your revenge? Let me know below, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next story.